How you doing? How's it going? Hey, it's a Friday here. I live in North Florida in Tallahassee, and I don't know where you live and what's going on weather-wise, but the pollen is really bad here, and it everything's blooming, and so I've just been sneezing a lot. I'm sure you would trade that if you're experiencing snow and sleet and all that stuff. I've been there, done that. Got the bruises from falling. Don't want it again. All right. My name is Lisa Edwards. I am the CEO, meaning I do everything, the exclusive career coach, which is my practice focusing on two things: folks who are in career transition, typically at the mid to upper levels, high achievers who are looking for that partner to help them get the next role in their career, both in terms of the marketing documents and the strategy and the skill set, such as interviewing and networking, that they need to be successful. The second group of folks I work with are people who aren't necessarily looking to change jobs, but they are very conscious about wanting to move up within perhaps their selected industry, but they want to achieve the executive ranks. And they are either aware of something that's holding them back, they're not aware, but they know that something is. Maybe they've gotten feedback from a boss, or it could just be something that they really want to work on in order to feel like, hey, I'm ready for that next level. As a reminder, I have another podcast, The Exclusive Career Coach, which focuses on that first group of people, those in job search transition. Last week's episode was 369. I can't even imagine. I've been going forever. And it was on, do I need a career change or just a new job? So I really walked through the sources of job dissatisfaction, how to figure out what you are unhappy about at the root and what to do about it, depending on what you figure out. So if that sounds good, give a listen. This week, I'm talking specifically to those of you who lead others, which is a main component of this podcast: executive development, leadership skills, those kinds of things. And my goal with this week is to add another toolkit to your ability to coach your team members. What I have noticed is I have worked with leaders who are struggling with some aspect of managing their team, is that they are often focused on the direct reports' behaviors, which is a piece of it, but it's only a piece. It's what they are doing or not doing that is causing some kind of a problem in their department function, whatever it is. It doesn't usually get to the root of the problem. And I'm going to give you some examples that I think is going to illustrate all of this for you. It really is what they are thinking slash believing that is causing the behavior. And to be clear, a belief is just something that you keep thinking so much that you accept it as a truth for yourself. And again, all going to become much clearer until you, as their manager, can excavate. I'm going to be using that term because I think it's a really good one. If you can, once you can excavate their thought process, you can begin to get to what is actually going on. Until then, you're kind of working at cross purposes because you're telling someone, stop doing this, but you're not figuring out why they were doing it in the first place. And that's a really important piece of this. I'm going to call this the feedback loop of doom because you're treating the employee's behavior like the problem rather than a symptom of the problem. Some examples. So, what I'm calling this is the surface coaching model, behavior focused, surface coaching. So, the behavior is Sarah in your department, a senior analyst, is consistently missing deadlines for her monthly reports. The surface coaching is you sit the Sarah down, you focus strictly on the clock, and you say, Sarah, you've missed the last three deadlines. I need you to start using a project management tool and block off 4 hours every Thursday to get these done. Can you commit to that? And the result is Sarah agrees. What is she going to say? No. So she feels pressured. She agrees. She blocks time on her calendar. But when that time on Thursday comes, she finds urgent, quote unquote, emails to answer instead. She misses the next deadline. So the behavior didn't change. So why does this fail? The manager assumed that Sarah's problem was logistical, time management. By only addressing the what, which was the missed deadline, and providing a how, which was the calendar booking system, calendar blocking, he ignored the why. The hidden thought process here is what's important. Sarah actually believes that if this report isn't perfect, people will realize I'm not qualified for this senior role because she is paralyzed by perfectionism. And I learned a long time ago that perfectionists are scared people. They're fearful. She procrastinates to avoid the pain of potential failure. A calendar fix cannot fix a fear of inadequacy. So we call this in coaching failing in advance. So this fear of if I do this thing, I may fail, so I'm not going to do it, which what they are doing essentially is guaranteeing their failure. We call that failing in advance. All right, so excavation coaching, which is what I'm going to call this underlying thought process coaching, that excavation. This is a different situation. So the behavior is Marcus, who is a team lead, refuses to delegate tasks, leading him to being burnout. His team feels micromanaged. It's not good. The excavation coaching, instead of telling Marcus to just let go, hey, start delegating. What's wrong with you? The manager asks curious, emphasize that word, open ended questions to find the root. He is not asking those kinds of questions that are judgments. He is curious and he is open ended. So the manager says, Marcus, I noticed you're still handling the vendor transitions yourself instead of handing them to your associates. What goes through your mind when you think about passing that task off? Marcus says, I just feel like if it's not done exactly right, it creates more work for me later. Ooh, okay. So the manager now, a little more excavating. So the thought is, it's faster if I do it myself. If you keep believing that, what happens to your ability to lead a bigger strategy? Ooh, that's a good one. And so the result here is that Marcus realizes that his thought is my value is in the execution, not the leadership, is actually what's holding him back. And P.S., and by the way, this is an issue that I coach a lot of folks on when they go from being an individual contributor to leading a people project, whatever it is that they're leading, is they have to let go of that part of themselves that was a subject matter expert and got them to where they are because now they need to lead the people who are doing what he used to do. So, why does this work? By excavating the thought, the manager helps Marcus to see that his behavior is a logical reaction to a flawed belief. There's nothing wrong with Marcus, he's not broken. But once he shifts his thoughts from I must do this to ensure its quality, to my job is to grow others' ability to ensure quality. The delegation is going to happen more naturally. The manager isn't going to have to nag him. He's going to see the benefit. Now, I want to give you one more model where I take the same example, first with surface coaching and then with excavation coaching. So hopefully this is starting to, um, you know, coagulate for you, if that's the right word. So here's the behavior. Elena is a brilliant engineer who is remarkably silent in high stakes strategy meetings. Moment for drink. Even when the team is headed toward a technical error that she likely sees, she stays quiet and only mentions it in a private one on one with her boss later on. So, the surface coaching model here that focuses on action, the manager would notice the silence and try to motivate her into speaking up. He might say, Elena, I need you to be more vocal in these meetings. You have great insights. Next time, I'm going to call on you specifically so that you can share your thoughts with the group, okay? And of course, Elena's going to feel put on the spot and anxious. She's going to agree in the meeting with her boss because what's she going to say? But when she is called on in the next meeting, she gives short, safe answers that don't add much value. So now, people are like, what's going on with Elena? Like, I thought she was smarter than this. And also, she begins to dread those meetings even more. All right, here's the excavation coaching model that focuses on the mental goings on. The manager realizes that Elena isn't shy. She's likely operating under a specific set of internal rules. So the manager says, Elena, I noticed that during the roadmap sessions, we're going to get very specific, you had some concerns about the architecture that you waited to tell me afterward. What's the internal rule you're following during those big group discussions? And to be clear, this may be something that you kind of have to help Elena to understand this idea of an internal rule. But Elena then says, I feel like if I point out a flaw in public, it looks like I'm attacking the person who proposed the idea. And I don't want to do that and be that person. So the manager continues to excavate and says, okay, that's interesting. So your thought is correcting a peer in public equals an attack. If you hold on to that thought, what is the cost to the project? Elena says, well, we might build the wrong thing and have to scrap it in 6 months. The manager says, exactly. What if we shifted that thought to sharing my expertise as an act of protection for the team? How would that change how you show up? And I will say, whenever I am coaching clients on thinking a new thought, I always equate it to like going into your closet and trying on different outfits. You've got to find the one that you feel good in, looks the best on you, is the most appropriate for whatever occasion you're dressing for. But it's kind of like that. Like, okay, I thought that shirt, that thought was the right one, but it doesn't feel. So I'll always give my clients some ideas of thoughts, but then a lot of times we will workshop on the thought that they kind of end up settling on. So in this scenario, the manager identifies that Elena's behavior isn't a lack of confidence, and it's certainly not a lack of, engagement, like she doesn't like her job and doesn't want to participate, but it's a misguided sense of loyalty. So the old thought for Elena was speaking up is aggressive, whereas the new thought is silence is a risk to my teammates. That is huge, 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 huge. Now, to be clear, surface coaching is faster in the moment. It might take 30 seconds to tell someone to speak up, don't be late, use this tool. But excavation coaching is more efficient in the long run because it actually solves the problem instead of just managing the symptoms. So think about it like going to the doctor. If my knee, which I'm dealing with right now, I'm having a lot of knee pain. I don't want to just take pills or have injections. I want to solve the problem so that I'm not dependent on the drugs, right? So here's a comparison table, behavior versus thought. So the behavioral approach that, focusing on the surface model, they're going to focus on the what, the behavior itself. Your role as the manager kind of becomes that of a policeman or a monitor, and your long-term outcome is compliance. It's a temporary fix. Do this thing right. Whereas with excavation, the focus is on the why. You take on the role as kind of a detective and also their partner in helping them to grow. And the long term outcome is permanent transformation. Now, there are three transition phases and the logic behind them to help you as a manager move from the surface to the excavation. In other words, I don't expect you to just listen to what I've talked about so far and be like, okay, got it. This is perfect. Let me go. So let me give you some steps. So, number one, the logic check. And this is best when an employee is doing something that seems counterproductive or illogical. So you are observing a behavior and you're like, this is weird. Either it's weird because there's a better way to do it, or it's weird because that employee doesn't usually act that way or do that thing that way. So you might say, I've noticed behavior X and I'm curious. There's that curious word again. What's the internal rule or logic you're following that makes that the right move in the moment? So again, come at it from a place of curiosity. I've noticed that when you go to the copy machine, like whatever it is, what's the internal rule or logic that you're following that makes that the right move in the moment? And this is why it works. You are assuming that your employee is a rational human being. It doesn't frame their behavior as wrong. It frames it as a result of specific logic, and you are lowering their defenses. If you come to somebody and say, "Why are you doing that this way?" their wall is going to go up. So that's option number one in this transition from surface to excavating. And that's the logic check, best for when an employee is doing something that seems counterproductive or illogical. Next, we have the story bridge. And this is best when there is a clear gap between their intent and their impact. So they're doing something and we're not getting the result that we want. You could say something like, I can see you're working really hard on this, but the result is problem Y, whatever that is. What is the story you're telling yourself about what's most important right now? And why this works is it uses the concept of the story I'm telling myself by Brene Brown. It separates the person from the thought, right? So the thought is something you can both look at objectively, put it on the table, observe it, but you're not attacking the human. So that's the second option, the story bridge, which is best when there's a clear gap between what they're doing and the result they're getting. And then third is the assumption reveal. And this is best for when an employee seems stuck or paralyzed by a task. You might say, if you were to take a different approach, what's the risk your brain is trying to protect you from? And this works because it gets straight to the protective thought. Most bad behaviors are actually safety behaviors. So, procrastination, as I talked about earlier, protects us from failure. Micromanaging projects protects us from a loss of control. And when you identify the risks, you identify the thought. So here's an excavation script flow. We start with an observation. So think of this as like the architecture, the canvas for an excavation script flow. Excavation script flow. First step is observation. I notice you didn't delegate the alpha project. So just an observation, not about them, not personal. Second is the pivot. I'm less interested in the what and more interested in the why. Walk me through your thinking here. The next step is the excavation. What's the belief behind that? For example, they might say, if I don't do that, it won't be perfect. The next step is the challenge. If you keep believing this, what's the long-term cost to your career? What's the long-term cost to our team? What is the long-term cost to the project? Whatever's appropriate. And then finally, the reframe. What's a new thought that would allow you to let go without feeling like you're failing? And again, as I said earlier, I encourage you to, if appropriate, workshop that new thought with them. And I will say that one of the things that I have to do with clients, especially when they think around things about their candidacy for their next job, their qualifications, how attractive they're going to be to another employer, we have to do what we call ladder thought. So we can't make a 180 from I'm a terrible candidate to I'm a great candidate, but what can we believe in kind of ladder steps to get us to I'm going to be a great candidate. So you may have to do that as well. So if in this case the candidate is believing if I don't do that, it won't be perfect, what's a new thought? So they may not be able at that point to go to if I delegate this, it's going to eventually be a better product. It could be a thought like, I want to, here's a very baby step. I want to begin delegating one thing this week. That's my thought. It's kind of a thought and a goal at the same time, but you have to have the thought to get the goal. I am capable of, maybe that's even, they have to even start there. You have to work with where they're at and don't try to take them too fast, too far, too fast. In summary, if you only coach the behavior, you're really just a glorified hall monitor. You want to coach the thought to actually be a leader. One is about compliance and the other is about evolving that employee to their next best level. I hope this has been helpful. I found it a very interesting topic. I've had it on my kind of burners for a while. And then when I did the dig in and prepared and did my research, I really, really enjoyed this topic. So I hope it has resonated with you as well. As a reminder, you can find me back here at the Exclusive Career Podcast in 2 weeks, where I'll be talking about something I don't know what yet. I do. I don't have it in front of me. And then next week, I'll be back on the Exclusive Career Coach, where I'm talking about, actually, I have it right here, cover letters in 2026, yes or no. I'll see you hopefully in both places soon. And in the meantime, take care.